What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So we have quite the horror news update. This is going to be a bit of a lengthy one because we are dipping our toes into what I'm going to start calling the Flanaganverse. Mike Flanagan has got himself into and involved in so many projects that are going on, and we have some unfortunate news in regards to one of them. And I think when I look at the three, it's the one I'm most not sad or upset, but I'm not happy about, because of the three, it probably would have been the one I would have wanted to have seen the most. One of them we've already touched on probably a couple weeks ago, and now we have an update on another. So again, this is going to be a lengthy one. Three separate projects that Mike Flanagan has been working on, was working on, no longer will be working on, however you want to spin that. But again, I'm calling it the Flanaganverse. So we're going to just jump right into this update because again, it is going to be somewhat lengthy, but we'll try to get through it as quickly as we can so it's not that long of a video. Again, so the foundation for this is going to be Mike Flanagan. Some of the more recent things he's working on. As you see from this first article, the headline we're going to go through is Carrie. Samantha Sloyan joins Mike Flanagan's TV series as Margaret White, plus more casting. So if you didn't know, now you know. Mike Flanagan is working on a Carrie TV series. So this isn't the first time this has been attempted. We've seen various Carrie movies. We've seen a reboot of the original Carrie movie. Didn't go over well. So Mike Flanagan now has been tasked to take another shot, or take his first shot, but another shot overall for the Carrie franchise, we'll call it, to try to reignite this franchise, this IP, which personally, I don't think it really needs it. I think it's just one of those, hey, the original film is good. It is one of those cornerstone, many would consider it to be one of those cornerstone horror films in the genre. I just don't think it's one of those IPs that you need to keep building on. Again, I feel like it's had its time. It tried to have another attempt at its time. It didn't go over well, and here we are again trying it as a third time, I'll call it, so to speak. But now taking the TV series route, which I mentioned this in another recent video where we talked about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre IP that's currently kind of up for grabs, so to speak. And there's Glenn Powell and another individual, his name escapes me, that if they happen to get a hold of it, they may go the TV route, which again, I don't think many of these classic horror IPs necessarily need to go the TV route, but I think that's the route many of them are going to start going. And I say that because we are seeing that with, for example, Crystal Lake. We're seeing that happen with Carrie. And I wouldn't be surprised if Glenn Powell and company happen to win the rights to proceed with something new for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're going to see a TV series on that, which I don't think a TV series really sits well. We've seen the prequels of that story a bit. We've seen sequels. We've seen a reboot. And it's just a matter of time, I think, before we eventually see a Nightmare on Elm Street TV series. It's going to be a matter of time before we see a TV series come out called Haddonfield, right? Which I don't think it's necessarily needed. But what do I know? I'm just a fan. So let's jump into the article details for this one before we move on. Stephen King's horror classic Carrie is headed to the small screen with a brand new adaptation from Prime Video and Mike Flanagan, and Deadline brings us more casting news. In addition to the previously announced Summer Howell, who will be playing Carrie White, and Matthew Lillard, who will be playing Principal Grail, the cast for Flanagan's Carrie series will include Amber Midthunder as Miss Desjardins. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing any of these names correctly. And actually, I'm not going, just for time's sake, as I always do, I'm going to put all the links for all these articles in the description of this video, but we're not going to literally read every single one of these names. You can clearly see right here quickly, and you can pause it, you can pull up the article, who's all going to be, who's been casted thus far in this, right? We just move on quickly here. Prime Video recently confirmed a series greenlight for Carrie, an 8-episode adaptation of Stephen King's classic 1974 horror novel produced by Amazon MGM Studio. Mike Flanagan serves as writer and showrunner in addition to directing select episodes. In Stephen King's Carrie. And so this is just a synopsis of the story, which we're not going to read there. Described as a bold and timely reimagining of the story, the upcoming Prime Video show is executive produced by Flanagan and longtime producing partner Trevor Macy. Carrie was previously adapted by Brian De Palma in 1976, David Carson in 2002, which was, I think, the remake year, and Kimberly Pierce in 2013, or maybe that was the remake year. Kate Shea also directed a Carrie sequel movie back in 1999. Actually, I think 2013 was the remake year. Reboot year. So all this to say is we got more casting information for this. 8 episodes, which is the standard now for any TV series. It seems to be 8 episodes. The max they're doing would be 10 episodes. I am curious to know what the runtime for these episodes is going to be. If you didn't know, you haven't seen already, The Bondsman, which was done by but starring Kevin Bacon, was one of those supernatural, I don't want to call it horror comedy, but horror shows. And it released its full string of episodes, full season in one go, 8 episodes, roughly 27 to 32 minutes an episode, not that long. And literally the series was canceled, I think, 2.5, 3 weeks later. Bacon came out and said had no idea what was going on, had no insight as to why the show was canceled. Amazon is saying, oh, well, the numbers didn't support it. It was in the top 10 and came in at number 9 in viewing hours, I think, in week 1. But then after that, it completely fell out. Well, of course it fell out. You dropped all 8 episodes in week 1, which would explain why it was number 9 in its week 1. And then everyone watched it, and then it was done with. You had nothing else to hold on to. You left it open on a cliffhanger. You had people enjoying the show, and now they have nothing left now. You've literally just canceled. You're turning it into somewhat of a Netflix here, who you don't give a show time, one, to garner a following, and then when it starts to garner a following, you cancel the show without seeing what it can produce over time. So hopefully with Carrie, who knows if this is going to be a one and done. It's Amazon. They could drop all 8 episodes on day 1 and then cancel it within a month. Who knows? Which, unless this is going to be a banger of a show, I don't know what more they're going to tell us about this story. I mean, it's going to be a reimagination of the story, but how much more can you reimagine the story? I mean, unless you're just using the name and a little bit of the foundation aspects and then telling a completely different story, I'm not sure how much more different this is going to be, but we'll have to wait and see. All right, so jumping, as we continue along with the Flanaganverse, now we're going to jump over to a couple of days after that article. Mike Flanagan says Batman, the animated series, inspired his Clayface movie script. That's great. I'm glad to know what inspired you. We're going to read through this pretty quickly, only because we reported a couple weeks ago, that it had come out that they are rewriting Mike Flanagan's script, and he's no longer a part of the project. He is now moved on to something else, so let's see if this even touches on that. DC character Clayface is getting a live-action movie written by horror master Mike Flanagan. Not necessarily true anymore, though it's important to note that Flanagan himself won't be directing the movie. James Watkins will be in the director's chair for this one. It's equally important to note that Flanagan penned Clayface movie is currently undergoing revisions. There we go. With writer Hassan Anami coming on board to revise the script, it's impossible to know at this stage how much of Flanagan's vision will remain intact. Highly doubt it will be much of it at all, to be honest. I think it will just be in namesake at this point. With Flanagan himself pondering the very same question in a new chat with comicbook.com. Quote, I don't know what they're doing with Clayface, Flanagan admits. I'm not directing it, and that filmmaker will need to make it their own. I know that they're doing work on the script. I'm off doing other things now. I really hope it remains true to the spirit of what I wanted it to be. But it's not my movie, so I'll be in the audience with you, anxious to see how it comes out. Flanagan's screenplay for the Clayface movie, he reveals in the chat, was heavily inspired by the character's appearance in the classic Batman the Animated Series, particularly a 2-part episode titled Feet or Clay, which famously introduced Clayface into the series. Quote, I mean, that is the perfect story, Flanagan tells comicbook.com. Feet or Clay. Ron Perlman, to me, that's it. That two-parter knocked me out. The short answer is this is absolutely what inspired my script. This is the world I wanted to live in. So Flanagan's script was described as a Hollywood horror tale centering on a B-movie actor which injects himself with a substance to keep himself relevant, only to find out he can reshape his face and form, becoming a walking piece of clay. With Flanagan describing the project back in 2021 as a horror slash thriller slash tragedy. But again, there's no telling how much of Flanagan's vision will be changed by Hassan's revisions. Stay tuned for more. So it just goes on a little bit, talk a little more about Clayface animated series. So this is what I don't see this. Honestly, I don't see anything of Mike Flanagan's script remaining. Like any other project, when you bring somebody in, and I'm surprised to see this because we covered off on a couple of times when this was first announced, and when we found out Mike Flanagan's script was being redone. James Gunn, who's co-CEO of DC Studios, was quoted as saying that he was brought a script and he said, bring me an updated one, and he was convinced. Mike Flanagan and his script convinced James Gunn to do a Clayface horror thriller tragedy film that James Gunn had zero intentions, zero plans, zero thought of ever doing before this script came about. And he said that script convinced him to do the film. Yet now you bring in somebody else to redo the script. So that tells me that script obviously wasn't that great of a script to you if you're bringing somebody else in to do it. Otherwise, you would keep the script, hire someone to direct and say, this is the script we're going with, and I want you to direct it. And obviously then James Gunn would be along for the way to make any adjustments. Otherwise, why bring in someone to revision it? And now Mike Flanagan is saying, yeah, I have no idea what's going on with it, no idea pretty much what's going to happen to my work. And I think, like any other thing, this individual is going to want to put his own stamp on the script. He's going to want to make it his own. Just like when a new director comes in, they want to make it their own. They don't necessarily want to do exactly what the previous director was going to do. They have their own style. So I'm very disappointed in this. I was very excited to know that we were going to get a more grounded horror thriller tragedy version of Clayface. And it just really sucks that didn't pan out. Mike Flanagan's script now, in my opinion, is going to be pretty much non-existent. They can say, oh, well, we only changed 10% of it. That's BS. We know it's going to be more like, well, we changed 90% of it. And we kept some of it in spirit, in an homage or a tip of our hat to Mike Flanagan. So that's the latest on the Clayface movie script, or movie that was supposed to be coming pretty much from Mike Flanagan. Now, as we move on to the last story for the Mike Flanagan or the Flanaganverse, this is the one that I'm the most disappointed in finding out about. So then a few days after that news, Mike Flanagan's The Exorcist will definitely not be hitting its March 2026 release date. So let's go on to talk about this. Mike Flanagan is a busy man at the moment, with The Life of Chuck headed to select theaters this weekend before a nationwide release next weekend. Flanagan is also adapting Stephen King's Carrie for a Prime Video television series, which we just talked about. Where does that leave Flanagan's The Exorcist movie for Blumhouse and Morgan Creek? Well, you may have to wait a bit for that one. Flanagan's The Exorcist had been dated for a theatrical release on March 13, 2026, but he reveals in a response to a fan over on Tumblr that there's no way it's going to meet that date. Production hasn't started. We need to finish Carrie first. No way it's coming out next March, Flanagan reveals. He added for clarification, however, nothing to worry about though. David Gordon Green's plan, The Exorcist trilogy, which began with the poorly received The Exorcist Believer, is no more, with Blumhouse pivoting down a new path instead, which is pretty disappointing. I mean, yeah, The Exorcist Believer wasn't all that great of a film. I think it could have been one of those ones where the first film wasn't that great, but they could have made some adjustments, and the second and third film could have been better, or at least dramatically better than the first. But I get it. Typically, if you have a trilogy plan, the first one's not well received, and you're not going to want to continue down that story. And if you are going to make adjustments, it's going to mean you're going to have to abandon that story or that trilogy altogether. So makes sense. While plot details are currently under wraps, Flanagan's film will tell an all new story in the Exorcist universe, and it's definitely not a sequel to The Exorcist Believer. Flanagan's feature is said to be a radical new take for the franchise, and he teased his vision for the franchise's big screen return in a chat with The Hollywood Reporter last year. Let's go on. Quote, "We aren't making this easy on ourselves," Flanagan told the site, "but I've always felt that there's no point in going into a franchise or into a property that Monolith uses unless there's something new you can bring. I chased the Exorcist very aggressively because I was convinced I had something that I could add." He continued, quote, "There's an opportunity to do something I believe has never been done before within the franchise, something that honors what came before it, but it isn't built on nostalgia. I really just saw an opportunity to make the scariest movie I have ever made. I know expectations are high, so no one's more intimidated than I am." Flanagan previously said in a statement, "The Exorcist is one of the reasons I became a filmmaker," so on and so forth. And I, for one, enjoyed the Exorcist franchise. I know a lot of people don't necessarily enjoy the second film in the franchise. So we have the original, obviously. Then you had the second film, The Exorcist, The Heretic, which Linda Blair did come back for. Many people just absolutely did not like that film, and many people don't really even consider that to be necessarily they don't consider it to be as a true sequel. Many people skip over that one and believe that The Exorcist Part 3 is more of a true sequel to the original film than The Exorcist, The Heretic. I, for one, like other films, when it comes to disregarded sequels, like even if it's like The Godfather Part 3 or Alien 3, I enjoy those films. I enjoy those films for what they are. I also especially enjoy like the various director's cuts or what have you of those films. So all that to say is I enjoy The Exorcist Heretic for what it is. I think it was just one of those times when you had horror films, when they had an amazing original film, there was always that expectation that there would be a follow-up sequel. And many times those sequels did not pan out. I mean, The Exorcist felt it. Even Halloween felt it. I mean, if you don't know the backstory of Halloween 2 from 1981, that was never meant to be made. John Carpenter and Deborah Hill never wanted to make that film. They only agreed to make that film to be absolutely done with the Halloween franchise and in hopes of Michael Myers never coming back to the big screen again, which is why we saw what we did for Halloween 3. And the only reason why they brought Michael Myers back is because so many people wanted Michael Myers back after many people saw, I don't want to say the downfall, but the not so popular take of Halloween 3. The whole thought process was, after Halloween 2 was every Halloween, it was every year or every other year there would be another movie called Halloween, and it'd be a completely different story. It was meant to be just like a seasonal type movie, not to necessarily follow one specific villain, in this case Michael Myers. That's not how it panned out. So anyways, all I have to say is I enjoy the Exorcist franchise. Like I said, Exorcist Believer wasn't that great of a film. It had its moments, had its entertaining parts, but again, overall, I can understand why they abandoned that trilogy. Just unfortunate now we're going to have to wait even longer now to see what Mike Flanagan is going to be cooking up for his version or his take or addition to the franchise, especially since he's saying it's not going to stand on nostalgia and he's got a completely new story for it. So hopefully it does have a new story. Hopefully it does have a new take if it's supposed to be one of his scariest films he can do. So interested in that. So that's going to wrap it up for this horror news update for the Flanaganverse. The latest on the Carrie TV series casting, where things are currently at with the abandoned Mike Flanagan script for the horror tragedy thriller Clayface film, and Michael Flanagan's The Exorcist is now not going to be happening next year. We don't know when it will be happening, but hopefully it does not come down to a point where it just gets abandoned altogether and canceled permanently. So drop a comment in the comment section and let us know what you think about any one of these topics in the Flanaganverse. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, we'll see you at the next one. Later.